Let's be real for a second. We've all been there, haven't we? You just plan to check one little thing on your phone, and then, poof, you look up and an hour has completely vanished. You've been sucked into that scrolling vortex.
But here's the kicker. That isn't an accident. That lost time isn't some bug in the system, it's the main feature. These apps are literally, from the ground up, engineered to keep you hooked. So you gotta wonder, how exactly do they pull it off?
Well, this whole thing, this intentional design, it's not just for kicks. It's all about the business model that runs pretty much the entire internet today. And that brings us to this big idea called the attention economy.
Okay, so think of it this way. In this economy, your attention is the product. It's the most precious thing there is. Platforms aren't just fighting for your clicks, they're fighting for every single minute and hour of your day. See, the longer they can keep your eyes on their screen, the more ads they can sell. You're not really the customer here. You're the product being sold.
So how do they grab that attention? It's a strategy called persuasive design. You've got the infinite scroll, so there's literally no bottom to the page, no natural place to stop. Then there are variable rewards. You keep swiping and swiping, hoping for that one amazing video. It's just like a slot machine. Autoplay just makes the decision for you, rolling right into the next video. And of course, those little red notification badges. They create this nagging urgency, this need to see what you're missing. Every single one is a little psychological hook designed to keep you there.
But you know, it goes even deeper than just clever interface design. These platforms are tapping into something really powerful, something very human, our need for connection, for approval. And that's how they create what's called the social validation loop.
And this cycle right here is the engine of the whole thing. It's so simple, but so effective. You post something, you wait, then bing. The likes and comments start coming in. And every single one of those notifications gives your brain a little hit of dopamine. That's the feel-good chemical. It's a reward. So your brain starts to connect posting with that feeling of pleasure, which, of course, makes you want to post again to get another hit. It's a powerful, self-repeating loop.
And look, this isn't some abstract idea, it's straight-up biology. This quote nails it. Every single like, every share, it's a little drop of social reinforcement that our brains are just wired to crave. We're social animals, and these apps have basically figured out how to put a number on social approval.
Okay, so we know how these platforms are built to grab and hold our attention. But what's the actual effect this has on us? I mean, is it all bad news, or is the picture a little more complicated than that?
Well, first, let's just talk about the sheer scale we're dealing with. Back in 2020, there were 3.8 billion social media users. That's billion with the B. Almost half the entire planet is plugged into these systems. So whatever their effects are, good or bad, they're happening on a massive, massive scale.
And this is where things get really interesting, because it's not all one thing. Research from the NIH shows this clear duality. On the one hand, social media can be an absolute lifeline, right? It helps us connect, find support groups, and feel way less alone. But there's always a but. On the other hand, it can crank up the social comparison to an 11. It's been linked to anxiety and depression, and, ironically, can actually make people feel more isolated.
This leads us to a really crucial point. It seems like it's not if you use social media that matters, but how you use it. One Harvard study found that routine use, just checking in as part of your day, connecting with friends, was actually linked to positive feelings. But emotional connection, that's the compulsive checking, the one driven by a fear of missing out or FOMO, that was strongly tied to negative well-being. So why you scroll really, really matters.
So if just deleting all the apps isn't the only answer, then what is? Well, the solution might be a lot more subtle than you think.
Let's talk about this really cool study from Sweden's Jönköping University. Researchers were curious about this exact problem. They wondered, could a simple little nudge actually help young people get a better handle on their TikTok use?
The experiment itself was pretty simple. For a week, they had 11 participants use an app that just added a little bit of friction. Before TikTok would open, it would make them pause for a moment. Maybe it was a quick breathing exercise, or just a screen asking if they wanted to set a timer. Just a tiny, subtle interruption.
And whoa, the initial results looked huge. On average, the students cut their weekly screen time by 193 minutes. That's more than 3 hours a week, just from that tiny little pause. Sounds like a massive success, right?
Well, hold on, because this is where it gets really fascinating. Because the study was so small, that huge drop in time, it wasn't actually statistically significant. Now, in research speak, that just means they couldn't prove the nudge caused the change. It could have just been random chance, or maybe other factors, like, I don't know, the fact that it was exam season for these students.
So if the goal wasn't just to force them to use the app less, what was the real takeaway? The real answer came from talking to them. The participants said that tiny pause, that nudge, it broke the spell. It made them stop for a second and actually think, wait, do I really want to open this right now? It turned an unconscious habit into a conscious choice. The real power wasn't restriction, it was reflection.
And that kind of brings this whole thing full circle, doesn't it? We're caught in these systems built to eat up our attention, driven by these powerful psychological tricks. But maybe the way out isn't about fighting the system head-on, but just becoming more aware of our own part in it. At the end of the day, maybe the real goal should be shifting from mindless scrolling to mindful engagement. It's about changing our relationship with these apps from a compulsive habit to an intentional choice. It's about asking yourself why before your thumb even hits the icon.
And that leaves us with one final big question to think about. Is it possible that a healthier digital future isn't about building bigger walls to keep us out of these apps, but about creating tiny little speed bumps that give us a chance to reflect, a moment to decide for ourselves if we really want to go down that rabbit hole? It's definitely something to think about the next time you reach for your phone.